Welcome to the Drunk Linux User. I'm Len. I am the Drunk Linux User. And today we're going to talk about a couple of different distributions, one of which I've been talking about before, but there's another one that has just come out with a new point release. Their methodologies and approach towards displaying their systems is as different as Windows and Mac, and I'm going to show you why here in just a second. We're going to talk first about the new release of ElementaryOS, and they bill themselves as a thoughtful, capable, and ethical replacement for Windows and Mac OS. I'll let them describe what that means. You can go to their website, elementary.io. You don't have to pay for this. If you put a 0 in here under custom, you can just download it for free. Or if you want to pay the developer something, you can use these different cards and systems. I'm just going to say that a lot of people will, throw like maybe $5, $10, something like that, if they really, really enjoy it. If you want to, go right ahead. And if you don't feel guilty about it. So you get to find out what's new in the new point release. It's 6.1. I'm not even going to try to say what it's called. Jolie. They have refined their app centers so that you can not only get from their repositories, but more from Flatpak. And I think Flatpaks are going to be enhanced over time as well, which is really great. But if you want to see what it's like, it's very, very much like Mac OS. So if you're coming from Mac OS, visually, this is going to remind you a lot of Mac OS. In very basic forms, it's going to operate very much like Mac OS. It's also very much like the GNOME or GNOME desktop. I don't really see too much of a difference between this and Ubuntu as far as really what you can do. You do have some cool things like picture-in-picture. Do Not Disturb has been available with other desktops environments as well. Multitasking is nothing new, but they're refining it in Elementary. So if you have ever played with Elementary and left it because it didn't have some of the features you wanted, they may have them for you right now. But getting back to the appearance, yes, it does look like GNOME to me. It just instead of having the taskbar on the side, let's see, on Ubuntu they have, and I'm trying to remember how you're looking at it from the screen, on your left-hand side, you're going to see the launch icons, and what they've done here is they've used something very similar to a program called Plank, and it may actually be Plank, just reworked for them, on the bottom to make it look like the Mac OS panel at the bottom where you can launch from there. So you can do the same thing in Ubuntu if you like Ubuntu. You can do pretty much the same thing in any GNOME-based operating system. So taking a look at this might appeal to you if you want to get away from Mac OS, or, which can sometimes happen, Mac OS updates and your computer no longer can perform based on the new criteria that the operating system is looking for. And if you've been toying with the idea of going with Linux, take a look at ElementaryOS. This might be something that you like, but just be prepared for the difference in certain aspects of operation and what you need to do to make this work for you. Okay? There are going to be great resources available to you if you're coming from Mac to Linux in order to kind of wrap your head around what you need to do to make this work for you. Okay? So we've got ElementaryOS. I know I sound like I'm just beating a dead horse here, but Linux Mint is coming out with a new point release very, very soon, probably within the next week or two. Right now it's at 20.2. It's going to be at 20.3. Who'd have figured, right? This is very much like a Windows-based operating system. And I wish I had more pictures than what they're showing up here, but it's an extraordinarily, it's very, very much like Windows 7, or yeah, we'll go with 7. I think that's probably one of the more later releases that this looks similar to. You can't go by my screen, because my screen right now, and I can change that if anybody's even slightly interested. So I'm going to go to themes, and this is what you can do with Linux Mint that you really can't do with ElementaryOS. The irony is that ElementaryOS really does follow a lot of the Mac protocols, in that you really can't do much to theme Elementary. You can, but so we're just going to go with that. So yeah, we're just going to stop at that. So if I wanted to go with the regular Mint desktop, okay, that's Mint X. I want to go with Mint Y. Okay, why? Because, and go with their, let's say, we'll just go with their standard appearance. And controls, we'll go with Mint. And let's see, Mint. I know it's here because I just looked at it. We'll go with Mint Y Teal. It's not the right color, but you get the idea. Oh, just change this then. Mint Y Teal. All right. And then you can change the mouse pointer to whatever you want to. I'm just going to leave it alone for now. And you can change this either over to the cinnamon, or you can change it over to the Mint Y. You can see I really prepared for this teal. Okay, so as you're looking at this now, it looks an awful lot like a Windows-based operating system. You got the panel on the bottom, the launchers, and you got the system tray and all that stuff over here. So there's very, very little difference between the two as far as appearance is concerned. But once again, if you're moving from Windows to Linux, you're going to find there's a lot of changes that go from one OS to the next. Yes, there are control panels in Linux. Do they have the variety that you find in Windows? No, but you don't necessarily need to have all of them either. Anyway, you can see that this is and some of this is just for fun. I just go ahead and do this because I don't like flat, and I think it's kind of funny anyway. So Windows 97 NT, and we're going to keep that, and we're going to go with Windows Server. So back to looking like an old Windows machine. I still think it's cool. So those are the two that pretty much, if people are moving from one operating system to the other, they can feel more comfortable in this environment learning a different operating system, as long as they keep in mind it's going to be different. Okay, nothing is going to work exactly like the other. Now you can double click, you can do email and launch browsers, make videos and everything the same as you can in Windows. You might need some additional software in Windows or in Linux, or same in Mac. You just have to find out which is going to work best for you, and where is your workflow coming from? Is it coming from a Mac side, or is it coming from a Windows side? I did a little comparison shopping here about Elementary versus Linux. Linux Mint is a community-driven Linux operating system that's based on Ubuntu. The Linux distribution has great compatibility for open-source applications, and it can easily provide amazing media support. Linux Mint aims to deliver a platform that is simple to use, balanced, and suitable for mid-end hardware. If you use the Linux Mint Mate, you can use it on older hardware to some degree. You can do the same thing with XFCE, but if you've got something that's a little bit older than maybe 5 years, you may not want to try Linux Cinnamon from Linux Mint, simply because sometimes it just kind of drags your resources down a little bit too much. When it comes to ElementaryOS, the little information that they're putting up about Pantheon, which is their desktop environment, which resembles the Mac OS. is about the little information about Pantheon. Has some of the amazing features that help keep the desktop clean and enhance the workflow, like it has a picture-in-picture, multitasking views, and do not disturb mode. This has a list of requirements you will need to run each one of these systems. As you can see right here, for example, Linux Mint requires less RAM than ElementaryOS. And I think a lot of that might have to do with the fact that ElementaryOS is drawing heavily from the GNOME desktop. And Linux Mint had been on the GNOME desktop early on, and when Ubuntu, for example, switched from Unity over to GNOME 3 point whatever it was at the time, there were a lot of people that just did not like that paradigm shift. So Linux Mint came out, I think, around 2006 or so, and what they did is they designed a desktop environment that originally started off with the GNOME 2 and then kind of added on to it. You can't really say it's GNOME. It kind of is, but Cinnamon is definitely its own thing, as well as XFCE and as well as Mate, which is what the Linux Mint offers. You can see here that they're both reliant on Ubuntu, and they also are reliant on the most recent long-term support versions, LTSs. So right now we have 20.04, and that's what both of these operating systems are being based on. Now, skills required. I kind of find this a little bit ironic in one respect or another, because both of them say it's best for beginners. Yes, beginners can come in and they can start using this and pretty much start using it right off the bat. But you don't have to be a beginner to enjoy and use either one of these two operating systems. Reason being, if you use a command line interface mostly, you can just pretty much change your work environment around, just work off the terminal. It's going to work as well as any other Linux distribution when it comes to things like programming or web page design or anything that's really technically advanced beyond that scope as well. So if you just happen to like one over the other because it suits you, that is your choice. And again, this is basically what I'm trying to get at with this particular video. Software support, general purposes for the best for category. Again, I am seeing a lot of people who are on the internet who are using Linux Mint, or they're using Elementary for their businesses, for working at home, developing things that are pretty outstanding, actually. So I just really find it kind of hard to believe that it's just best for general uses. Linux Mint, for example, has a huge repository of software, very easy to get. And if you can't find it there, you can. Same thing with Elementary. You can go online and find it and install it yourself. You don't have to worry about anything in that regard. Software support, yes, Linux Mint does have an outstanding support system. ElementaryOS does not have exactly the same level that Linux Mint does, and which is kind of a little strange. I'll get to that in a moment here. Ease of use, they're both easy to use. Stability, Linux Mint is a bit more stable than ElementaryOS. Now, ElementaryOS, and I have not tried the new version, 6.1, but ElementaryOS I have found will lock up on me on occasion or just simply be non-responsive. And that's just my personal experience with Elementary. There are aspects of ElementaryOS that I find a little difficult to wrap my head around. For example, the way that they use the window widgets up in the right-hand side, they're pretty much hidden. I think basically all you have is the close and I think minimize. I think or one of them is missing. I can't remember which one it is off the top of my head, but you have to start thinking differently when you use Elementary And if you've come even from Mac OS, that's going to be a little bit difficult to kind of like get used to at first. Once you understand what you're working with, you just roll with it, right? Release cycles, don't worry about that so much. But moving over here, this is what I found a little bit interesting. The aim of Linux Mint is to create a strong and easy-to-use operating system that's modern, elegant, and comfortable. ElementaryOS, on the other hand, is defined as a privacy-respecting replacement for Windows and Mac OS. It's the company's flagship distribution, showcasing the Pantheon laptop. Well, Pantheon, to my knowledge, was their desktop environment, which replaced GNOME. In our view, Linux Mint is the best choice for those looking for a workstation distro, while ElementaryOS is the best choice for those looking for an aesthetically pleasing distro. There are several different Linux distributions, so read more posts on our website to get a better understanding of them, so on and so forth. This talks about more differences between Linux Mint and ElementaryOS, but I highlighted this in particular because I thought it was interesting. And this kind of goes back to buying ElementaryOS, and you'll notice that in their App Store, you can purchase software as opposed to just downloading it for free like you can off from Ubuntu, Linux Mint, whatever. The type of organization for ElementaryOS is they are a corporation. And I'm going to take a guess that they are incorporated for the fact that they are selling their operating system and they're selling software. And it's very possible that you have to be incorporated to be able to do such a thing. And you can see that Linux Mint is a community-based distribution. If something like this matters to you, this information may be relevant, and it may not be. It's up to you, but again, choices, and I'm also supplying some reasons. I'll have all these links in the show notes, so if you want to take a more in-depth dive into what's going on with these companies, you can do that there. This is StackShare, and you can see that there's a bit more activity going on with Linux Mint than there is with ElementaryOS. This is as of today. I found this comment very interesting. Developers describe Linux Mint as the most popular desktop distribution and the third most widely used home operating system behind Microsoft Windows and Apple Mac OS. Wow. So, and there's more in this paragraph. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I thought third, even behind Ubuntu, that's possible. That's possible as far as home use. Now, if you want to go on the corporate side of things, Ubuntu is probably going to be more common and more in use because Ubuntu servers, for example, are a big thing. They run an awful lot of industry, so I think probably this is an accurate description, perhaps, of home use. So there we go. We got that out of the way, and so when it comes back to the choices that you can have between distributions, those are just two of many. There are a lot of different type of desktops. KDE is very much like Linux Mint Cinnamon in respect to the layout. You have a panel at the bottom and all that good stuff. Just very much like Windows. And if you're opening up a window and going through a file system, nothing is out of the ordinary either way. If you know what video means, you can double click on your video folder and see your videos. Same thing with documents, music, whatever. Visually, they're very much the same. When you start getting into the nitty gritty and the nuts and bolts, things change radically because you're dealing with Apples and Linuxes or Windows and Linuxes. So don't even let that deter you from trying. If you have a Windows box or if you have a Mac OS box, see about putting in a virtual machine. Download the ISOs from each one of these different websites or from any other Linux distribution that you think is very interesting. Load them up, play with them, see if you like them. If it's too confusing, don't just give up right away. if you still have that little bit of interest, go to that distributions forums section. Understand that these people that are on those websites are also looking for information, and some people have already run across what you may need and have a solution that you can get. I have gotten most of my solutions within 12 hours, and I find that amazing. You can't pay for for that in some respects in some industries. So I would try a virtual machine first before just wiping off your OS or even trying to dual boot. Try it in a virtual machine. If you like it, awesome. If you don't, chuck it. Who cares, right? If you're not going to use it, don't keep it. It's just wasted space on your hard drive. So let's remember our good words of wisdom, especially during these holiday seasons. Don't drive drunk. Don't drink and drive. Don't go to eBay or Amazon, especially now, thinking that you're going to buy stuff when you're all buzzed up that's going to be super cool and awesome, because you're probably not. Bottoms up. Later, dudes.